Okay, hello everyone. My name is Henry Porter. I'm the Product Strategy Manager here at Qubit. And thanks for turning up to our latest webinar today on 10 fastest ways to boost your conversions. So I know this has been booked for an hour in the calendar, but I think in reality we'll probably just have a good half an hour. We'll go through some of the best practice ways that we've seen over the last few years here at Qubit working with our clients, of how we've really managed to boost conversions through some pretty simple and effective kind of behavioral measures. So I'm going to probably kick off with going through these 10 examples. We've got a range of examples from across both our own clients and across the wider web. And all three of these examples, it'd be good if you could be thinking about, of course, how could this apply to my site? How could we take these interesting ideas, these kind of behavioral nudges almost, that can get people who are on my site to move from simply being an interested visitor onto a converter? So to kick off, as a bit of an introduction, some of you guys might have seen this e-consultancy article over the last couple of weeks, researching a load of CMOs around the globe. And 70% of the people who were interviewed there simply said that they understand why personalization is important, and I guess in a way it's very clear about why personalization, having a personalized experience on the web, could be very, very powerful in terms of driving a business forward, but essentially you don't know how to do it. And that's really the reason that Qubit exists, and this is what we kind of hope to kind of tackle through here, is that the best place from my point of view to start in terms of how do we personalize an experience for your visitors and hopefully make them more likely to go and actually make a purchase with your site is simply to start thinking about your visitors in segments. So starting to divide up everyone who comes onto your website through various segments, whether that's traffic source or whether that's through, for example, how they interact with the site. So an example of a segment might be if you're a major high street retailer and you have a part of your website which is, it seems like a lot of your visitors are coming to just look at your store finder, then immediately you can start to pick up on that behavioral signal. There are people looking at the store finder, and then segment those visitors. When they come back to the site, you start to maybe perhaps alter the experience for them, to have a look at the online offline with things, for example, click and collect, which I know a lot of you guys will be looking into now if you do have a high street presence. And also just making it easy for people to find the stores and see stock in the stores, for example. But by defining these kind of segments of users, we can start to personalize the experience. So the structure of the 10 examples we're going to go through today are really going to kind of follow kind of a classic user journey funnel. Now, nowadays, as we know, this kind of classic user journey funnel doesn't really seem to apply in many ways. We often see, especially if any of you who've tried out any sort of marketing attribution method, you will see a whole variety of really random, at first seemingly random ways that people come onto your site, see categories, see products, before they actually reach that confirmation page. But in terms of actually driving people from just simply being an interested visitor onto a converter, it makes sense to kind of step through these categories. So kicking off with some ideas that we've seen successful on home pages, which is always quite a tough area to merchandise because you've got so many people in your business obviously fighting over the home page in terms of merchandising units. Category pages, products, and then driving them for that final kind of checkout process onto confirmation. So moving on quickly, what we really want these to be is 10 examples of how we can do some really kind of almost quick wins that can actually be quite effective. And the thing to kind of remember through here is that although many of the examples might be focused around retail, the actual concepts, the kind of behavioral kind of science, the idea of influencing people towards or nudging them towards particular behaviors on the site applies to a range of industries. So this is stuff that 10 examples that we've seen have worked across the web and with our own clients, and that we know we've seen good results from. And so they're definitely worth thinking about, how can I take these kind of behavioral ideas, apply that to my own sites, and get some really good results quite fast. And the interesting thing to think about here is, as we go through these, is that a lot of these are more simple than you might expect. And simply that's because it's more about communicating with the visitor rather than do, for example, a major page redesign. Many of our clients are very keen on, when they first come to join us, they say, okay, you want to do these major page redesigns, you want to change the design of this, change the copy on that. And we actually find that those can have an effect. Often it's these little nudges telling people where things are or how they should do them or how they can get an offer that can actually be the most effective when you actually go and test these, A/B test them, and then have a look at your results. So we'll kick off with a very simple but in many cases effective personalization, which is giving new visitors a warm welcome. So what is this exactly? So the idea is essentially to welcome people to your site. And you might have seen this on the web recently, whereby you land on a website for the first time and a pop-up comes up. Of course, although that can be helpful, often it might get in the way of the experience. So the idea of this welcome message appearing above the site, perhaps as a pop-up or as a light box, it can actually be much more powerful when you start to segment the visitors you show it to rather than showing it to everyone. So actually people are much more likely to engage with it. So obviously the key thing about this is that if people are jumping through the web very fast, they're landing from Google onto your site and then they're moving back onto Google or an affiliate search, you want to kind of get that key message in front of the visitor. Because most e-commerce websites these days, of course, have a very standard structure in terms of the navigation, the product pages, the category pages, the basket. So here's the chance to kind of jump out and say, hey, here's our 2 or 3 key USPs or even single USP that's really going to drive them to actually continue. So this is really useful for bounce rates as well as going on to the conversion rate. So we've got a few examples here, and we'll be putting these onto YouTube over the next few days. So you can always come back to these rather than trying to write them down now. But some of the really interesting examples that we've seen, for example, are geolocation. So one of our major clients recently opened up a store in France, and by having a light box appear on the site for people we detected were in France, but on the UK site we can say, hey, look, stop trying to convert pounds into euros as you go through the site. Go onto the French site. You'll also have the French delivery times and all of that. Another example, of course, is coming from different fashion sources. So if you know that a visitor has come in from a popular blog partner of you, for example, a fashion blog, then you can actually start kind of linking up that experience with your traffic source rather than simply for everyone who lands on that page, you'll get the same experience. So that's the idea of a welcome message. And in terms of some interesting examples here, this is a client of ours that we worked on a few months ago now, Crew Clothing, and those of you based in the UK will recognise this as a high street store. And what we simply did as a test for Crew Clothing is that we decided to test for new visitors, so that's people who've never come to Crew's website before, A/B test a number of variations of a message that would pop up and give them either an offer or welcome to the site. Now you should see that appear on your screen now. This happy shipping. So this is one of the free shipping adverts that actually won up. So you'd land on the site, you get this straight away for new visitors. And the idea is brand reassurance. So we also tested one that simply said, rather than offering an offer like this one has done, simply said, welcome to Crew, we do this, this and this, our delivery is this, as a nice welcome, and that had a strong conversion rate uplift as well. In this case, the winning variation was simply offering a free shipping to the new visitors. So if they've got that kind of natural e-commerce barrier compared to, say, the high street, I mean, taking Qubit's example, even in our office right here, we're based right next to Oxford Street. And so, of course, the question always is, are people going to go buy in the high street store where it's a lot harder to find around, but they can have it in their hand straight away, or they're going to go online? And there's that classic barrier of delivery cost. Are people going to pay the delivery cost? So if you believe your merchandise is worth people buying online, then absolutely it's a good opportunity to offer maybe new visitors a free shipping discount just to kind of get them to try the product. And free returns as well is quite powerful for that because it takes away that kind of fear of regretful purchase if you offer the free returns, and that gets them the chance to actually take a chance on you, essentially. So this particular message we're looking at now actually had, for all the visitors to see it, so for new visitors on Crew Clothing during the time of the test, had a 7.5% conversion rate uplift. So very simple messaging. Our designer put it together pretty quickly, but like I say, the actual idea of offering a gift in return of them to browse the site further was powerful there, and an instant 7% uplift in conversions. A similar effect, a few of you, especially if you're looking at this from the US, will have heard of Everlane. So what they do quite effectively is have certain layers that will appear during your experience, depending on the actions you've undertaken on the site. Now, arguably, you can design this in perhaps a more disruptive format. But if you see in the top right-hand corner, they encourage you to register straight away. And I believe these guys have Facebook registration, so it's very easy to immediately register and immediately get the CRM details of your visitors. Now, they can work out where you are, for example, if you're in the US, and immediately say, hey, you just signed up, you're a new visitor, you're in the US, here's free shipping on your first order. And another example coming up here is free returns. And once again, another powerful way of getting people to take that chance on your site. Now, moving on to something a bit more complex, but along kind of similar lines, is this idea that we've been really driving here at Qubit, and you'll see kind of spreading across the web really, of interest-setting retargeting. Now, that's kind of a fancy way of saying personalizing your website for your visitors, but as they're using it, or between sessions as well. So, moving on to the next slide here, the idea essentially is if we know something about a visitor, if you know they've, for example, filled in a form or they've viewed particular content on your site, adjusting the site experience around them dynamically, either in the same session, so the same visit, or perhaps when they come back a week later to remember what they're looking for. So this is something that's really powerful right now in the travel sector. And the reason for that is travel sector, compared to, say, retail, you've got this great thing, which is whereby people are putting in their intent into the form. They come onto your site, they put in 2 adults, 2 children, they say where they want to go, they say their budget roughly, you can kind of estimate that, and those kind of things. And when you've got this kind of signals of intent, it very much becomes a bit like AdWords on Google, where you can start to adjust the experience based upon the intent, rather than the default, which is obviously just to serve them the products that come out of your database. So if you've got form data, perhaps the referrers they've come from, so if they've come from a particular ski blog and they've landed on your travel site, you have this idea that they'll be interested in skiing, for example, as well as visitor history as well. So another way you can do this is if you know that someone has come to your site last week and it's in midsummer but they're browsing the ski holidays, you know that next time they come to the site, the first thing they should dominate your homepage is welcome back. Check out our ski holidays. Here's what you searched for last time, perhaps, or simply here's our best deals on ski holidays right now. Another client of ours, actually, which has been doing this quite effectively, has been looking to do this in terms of tickets to attractions, and this is the idea that, say you go onto a website and you're looking just at Florida. Next time you go back to the site, if the site is all just talking about, for example, Disneyland Paris, that's not going to be very useful to you. But if it's actually personalized with a Disneyland background, banners around the site, you immediately think, oh yeah, that's exactly why, this is what I was looking at on this website. This is what I'm really interested in. So we've got a really good example here, which we've used in a number of clients. And for demonstration, we're going to use our own website for our demo website, which is a site called High Street Shopper, which we use to kind of demonstrate all these cool things you can do online. Say you've been on High Street Shopper and you browse the you've browsed some sunglasses. What we do is when we return to the home page, as you see here, automatically you can throw an advert up there. Obviously this is a very quick example, but you can throw up an advert about what they're interested in. So if someone's coming to your site and they're clearly finding out sunglasses, of course you'll recognize the name retargeting from off-site retargeting. So those adverts that sometimes follow you around the web, say you've looked at a product on a fashion website and then later on you see the product following you on the Guardian blog, for example. This is simply having that idea but using it to personalize the site rather than relying on a retargeting partner to try and get them in once they've already left the site. So that can be a particularly powerful way of getting people onto the site, and that's definitely something that we as a company are trying to develop as an area of being really exciting. And I'm sure this is something that's really cross-industry as well. So whether you're in retail, whether you're selling energy, whether you're selling insurance, this concept is very simple, but doing it effectively and doing it at scale is something that you need help with, and hopefully you can come up with some great ideas of how to do some retargeting of people on your own website. Now, another really interesting way of driving conversions is newsletter signups. So often you will see, and I'm sure you'll see if you've got email as a big traffic source onto your site, onto your property, we see, as you might expect, the conversion rates from email signups to be sky high compared to, for example, organic search or search engine marketing and so on. Now, of course, you'd love to get more email addresses. So one simple way to do that, of course, is email sign-up capture. But this can be quite disruptive to visitors if you just throw it up at any time. So the idea behind this really is trying to find when is the best time to show the email sign up, rather than simply filling out whenever you can. So the process here really is, for example, on clients we've worked with, all new unregistered visitors, for example, will be shown this, but not necessarily thrown right in their face, taking over the whole page, perhaps on the sidebar of the screen, reminding people saying, hey, not found what you're looking for today? Well, that's no problem, sign up for your email address, and we'll send our latest stock every week, for example. Another kind of targeting you can do for people registering their email addresses, which obviously allows you to later target them with emails, is have a look at the behavior of people who've browsed several category pages on the site. They've moved around your site, they've looked around a load of different products, and yet they've still got an empty basket. This kind of signals to you that perhaps they're not going to purchase now, they're in that kind of research stage. So that's a good time to actually say, hey, have you got your email address? We'll keep you updated. And so hopefully they'll come back next week. And the way you can be clever about this, of course, is not only are you capturing the email addresses, one of the things we like to do here at Qubit is, of course, actually have a look at the on-site conversion impact of each email campaign. So if you're smart and you tag all of your email campaigns that you send out to all of your customers, and you make sure to tag up each individual email campaign, you can then trace back when they click that link to come back onto your site. You can trace them back and actually see a segmented view of all your email campaigns, say over the last year, and the conversion rate of each email campaign, but not just for that visit, but for their whole lifetime. So you can start to see not just collecting more email addresses, but being a lot more effective with those email addresses by tagging them up. So for a good example of this, LK Bennis of London, who are one of our clients, implemented this relatively quick test to implement with our engineering team here. Simply a pop-up that appeared asking for the email newsletter, and we found from this in the UK 38% increase in email sign-ups as compared to just hoping people will find the email sign-up on your site and be keen to sign up. And over in the US, 32% increase. So what we immediately see is a quite substantial increase in the rate of their CRM data collection from a very simple and cost-effective layer, which you can target quite effectively. So you're asking people just the right time rather than throwing a light box in their face like many sites seem to do. So that can be a really good way of boosting your CRM collection. Now, once you've got people back for your email campaign, how about pushing people to engage with their content? So obviously, this is one of the big trends in online over the last few years that we've really seen is these sites like Mr. Porter, Net-a-Porter, and so forth. We're really focusing on, rather than simply throwing products on the page, really merchandising around them. So, for example, Stylist Pick will have a stylist who will tell you about the product. Net-a-Porter and Mr. Porter will have almost magazine content essentially, but always linking back to the products. And if you've ever used Polyvore, for example, which is a fashion social network, you'll see that it can be very powerful. And I guess more recent times, Instagram, in terms of getting this kind of social aspects of getting people to engage both with content and the products rather than simply having a catalogue that's online. So there's kind of two kind of ways you can do about content. There's content targeting. So this is similar to retargeting that we just discussed, but this is the idea of working out with key behavioural signals what content is this particular visitor interested in. So if someone is always, once again, browsing the sunglasses or the shoes page, make sure that we're serving them the articles and the latest sunglasses, the latest sunglass brands, anything that's happening in their industry. So that will get their interest. And then, of course, linking back to products. The second side is, although many people have made a big investment in adding content to the site, it's not always obvious it's there, which sounds strange, but in the past, this kind of content has often been relegated to the fashion blog or the fashion magazine rather than actually an integrated part of the site. Now, realistically, it's not easy to tear up your entire e-commerce platform and chuck content everywhere in the same way that perhaps a few of the young startups are doing. But what we can do in this instance is to highlight where the content is. So if we have a look at example of Mr. Porter here, one of my favorite websites, they simply will take over the homepage to read, in this case, read this week's journal. So that's quite interesting because usually many companies, that kind of like key hero image there on the homepage will be always the latest product or an offer or something like that. This is actually, no, hey, take a look at the actual content. And we've seen this more and more recently. If you look at Net-a-Porter, you will see that they have a situation where you can put your mouse over on certain images, see who the actual, like a hotspot basically, see the designer behind the particular jacket and shop now. Now that's a quite cool feature that we found with our analytics on many similar websites, is that engagement conversion rate is high if someone sees get a look and actually masses over and clicks on buys the jacket. But actual engagement with these kind of images are quite low because visitors don't always know they're there. So what can be very powerful is simply saying, as a little layer that perhaps fades in on the side of this image on the left here and says, hey, for new visitors, hey, did you know that you can mouse over and actually see this product? And that's a very quick test to do, but it kind of points out to people a bit about the site and gets them thinking about how they can use the site beyond simply reading static text on a page. So sometimes you can have a really good conversion rate impact just by pointing out features which are already there on the page. Which really highlights on number 5 here, which is, following on from this, helping people buy by highlighting page functionality. So once again, many people, many of our clients we've seen investing a lot in this kind of content and extra functionality, but at the speed that often your customers are moving through the web, looking at your website, looking at your competitor's website, and so on, it's often actually quite hard to get their attention to actually focus and actually have a look at a new feature. You see this with change blindness, where you can change a major part of your website, but because people navigate very quickly by looking across the screen for the key navigational elements, people don't always notice that you've made this massive change in the site. So it's really key to help people kind of notice key areas. So one of these is simply quite powerful on retail sites is the filters. Now, many retail sites, especially fashion, will have a filter by size functionality. And this can be really powerful when it's used to actually change the stock level, the stock that's available on the page. So for a number of clients, we found that they had this size functionality where you could go on and can say, okay, I'm a size whatever, and it would only show you products in your size that are in stock as well. And that's obviously very useful, but many people browsing the site didn't know this. And we picked this up from actually customer feedback on our exit feedback tool, which appears when people look to leave the site, that people were asking for functionality that was already on the site. So as a test here, we encourage some of our clients to kind of do this filter by size idea, simply saying, hey, look, here's the features that are going to help you out. And the way to do that is say, give it to new users who aren't familiar with your site design, or perhaps have a look at their basket. So we have a thing called universal variable that we implement on our clients at Qubit, and we're actually rolling out kind of across the globe really in an initiative with Google and IBM. You'd have heard of this if you've seen only our marketing for W3C. And what this does is it represents all the data about what the visitor's doing in a JavaScript object on the page, and then sends that over to our analytics platform or any of your partners or your tag management system. And one of the things you do there is you include everything that's in the basket, so every product and the size, the quantities. When you've got that kind of like granular level of detail, what you can do is you can say, hey, I know that this customer has the same product in multiple sizes. For some of our clients, especially a client we're working with who sells, for example, luxury clothes and luxury underwear, people will often have different types of sizes in their basket. And so you can come up and say, hey, here's the size guide here. Here's how to filter by the size, which is your size, and that kind of thing. And that's actually just been really helpful to a visitor who maybe didn't quite realise they were putting a load of different sizes in their basket, which is actually quite common. So one site that we noticed online, which does this quite effectively, as just an example, we took a screenshot here, is this one here. So simply saying, select your size, and we'll show you any of the items that are in stock. That's just highlighting functionality. It's already on the page, but this can be really good for UX. And for our own clients who've implemented similar ideas to the one you see on the screen here, we've seen some really strong conversion rate uplifts, even to all users, let alone targeting it by a very particular segment. So kind of moving on to number 6, this is quite an interesting one, which you will have seen, especially if you looked at any if you guys have been researching any sort of personalization platform in the last couple of years, this idea of badging your products, so kind of highlighting interesting things about products. Traditionally, this has been used in shops to say this is a new product, this is on offer, but actually you can be a lot more effective and efficient about that. So, for example, if someone has been browsing particular sale pages or categories, you might see on many sites having a little badge appear on the product images. I'll move on to the example here just to clarify this. So if we have a look at Molten Brown here, Molten Brown of London, you'll notice on the bottom right-hand side, one of the liquid hand wash has a little save £6 badge on. So obviously that's quite an effective way that I'm sure many of you are already using to highlight products. The clever thing we can do here, and the reason we can be different to the traditional way of doing these things, is perhaps putting these badges on, but in a personalized and dynamic way. So rather than simply highlighting by default, everyone who comes to your site sees badges with the discounted products. Potentially, you're hurting your ROI there. You're potentially hurting your average order value because perhaps someone would have been interested in a higher value product, but they were distracted by the offers that you've thrown over the page. So what you can try and do is actually customize these badges depending upon what the visitor has done. So for example, if they've constantly browsed your luxury fashion, you could put those visitors in a segment in your analytics package and target them with the luxury fashion they've been looking for. But if they've been constantly looking at the sale pages, or in the past you've noticed, for example, they've entered a student discount code when they bought with you, and therefore they've signaled to you that they're a student and likely to be going for perhaps a bit more likely to be doing the offers, that you can then perhaps deploy badges such as the save £6 badge for those visitors who seem to be actively looking to get the best deals, to get the best discounts. And that means that you can be a lot more effective in your merchandising and your badging of products. Another client another website, which has been quite effective in badges is Farfetch. And they actually have quite a subtle badging here for new season. So very, very simple, highlighting that a product is new in season. Quite subtle, but because it's badges and it's different from the other products on the page, it can stand out. So you can start having a look at this kind of idea of putting this new season badge on certain new products and then using A/B testing, actually seeing if that has an effect in terms of driving people to that product, or whether there's perhaps a different badge or a different strategy that could work. So one of my personal favorites is urgency messaging. You might have traditionally seen this with stock, but this can also be used for digital goods as well, which is quite interesting. So the idea behind this idea of pushing stock with urgency messaging is using scarcity as a behavioral trigger to get visitors to act. So if people think an item is selling out fast, they're more likely to check out. Now this is something that we raised from our feedback that we have across visitors across UK and US and European retail sites. One of the people's biggest bugbears is products running out, and people always ask, look, if I had the chance to highlight it, then I'd be more likely to maybe purchase or sign up for an email to remind me when it's back in stock, that kind of thing. So the idea of having this is, if you've got a product, for example, that's got less than 5 in stock, which you can put into your universal variable data model, you can then go in and target people, if they want a product that's low in stock, a little badge that appears that says, hey, this is low in stock, let's go on it now. So classically, this would be used, for example, on a fast fashion retail site. Say, hey, these sunglasses only 5 less in stock. Of course, you might be thinking to yourself now, hang on, we serve digital goods. So if you're selling, for example, music or video games and stuff like that, you can be thinking this isn't going to work for me. But actually, there is a strong power in artificial scarcity. So what you can do is you can have urgency nudges around time-based offers, for example, and deals. So a company that does this really well is Valve Software. So as the name suggests, they are a software company which sells primarily software and video games. And they've emerged to be one of the biggest online software platforms for video games and now other types of home software on personal computers through their distribution platform called Steam. And one of the things that's really popular is sales. So what they'll do is they'll put stuff on sale or offer it on discount or in bundles, and they'll make it scarce through, rather than perhaps low in stock, but often just in terms of time, for example, 24-hour deals. And that gives a sense of artificial scarcity, because of course you can't run out of digital goods, but you can be artificial about it and actually cause this kind of urgency. And that can kind of encourage people to think, hey, I can't wait for tomorrow to buy this. I want to buy it now. And they've had some great success from their kind of economic planning in terms of their site, from just doing a good mix of high value goods mixed in with goods on offer, but only for very short times with a sense of urgency. And that sees massive sale volumes over a short space of time. So a great example for this is hotels.com. I'm sure if you've ever been on hotels.com and similar sites, you'll see a number of layers that kind of give you this urgency. So right at the top here, we see deal of the day, and this is very similar to what the example I mentioned with Valve do with video games and so on. Save 30%, hurry, end soon, but there's only 12 hours left on the deal. So then immediately you've got to make a decision there. Am I going to go for this deal? Another thing they do, which is popping on your screen right now, is showing what other people are doing on the site at the moment, which is quite interesting. So perhaps in London this isn't too powerful, but recently I had to go to a wedding in Oxford, and I left it the very last day to book my hotel. I went onto hotels.com to try and find somewhere to stay. And actually having all these nudges when you're looking for somewhere to stay can be quite powerful, because it says there's only one room left at this hotel, there's no rooms at this hotel, there's 3 rooms left here, there's 5 people looking at the page. That really kind of encourages you to get on and make a purchase of hotels.com, rather than perhaps going to one of hotels.com's competitors and trying to search around there. It kind of really drives a sense of urgency. Another one we'll see is on eBay. So even on products on eBay which are buy it now, so someone could actually just jump in straight away and buy it now, they like to start highlighting how many people are viewing this item per hour. So that gives a kind of sense of, okay, a whole bunch of people looking at this product. If I want it, I need to get it now. And that, of course, means it's more likely to get sold as compared to people thinking, okay, maybe I'll check tomorrow, maybe I'll check the next day, and the sale can drag on. So it's just kind of like the sense of urgency, the sense of, look, there's people looking at this product, buy it now, can have quite a powerful effect. And of course, if you've ever looked at in the airline industry, you know it's very similar when they're running out of flight tickets on a plane, for example, very similar effect. So we've talked a lot so far about kind of manipulating the page, or serving layers, as I call them, to kind of highlight particular functionality. One thing that can be really powerful is deploying widgets. So one of the things that we're trying to get down with Qubit and our work is deploying apps essentially to websites, but targeted. So an app might be, for example, live chat. So one of our clients, DFS, which was famous for sofas and many other home furnishing products, they have a service where you can go on there and they have a video conference, so a video chat with someone in their building. So if you've got a question about the sofa, they can go and speak to someone live, and then they can also actually have the person at DFS take over your screen and then go through the actual shopping experience and actually change the website to guide you to the right product. Now, throwing these kind of apps out can be quite expensive if you do it to all users and just hope people click on them. So the powerful thing is to deploy them at the right time. So, for example, if people are hanging around particular pages, they haven't got anything in their basket, or perhaps they're on your support pages, or maybe they're around the checkout, but they've been to their basket 3 or 4 times. They've maybe gone into checkout before, but then they've dropped out the checkout and gone back to the basket. Perhaps they've got a question about your process. It could be about free delivery. It could be about returns. It could be about the product itself. So it's quite powerful to actually deploy, hey, this is a chance for a live chat widget. Another thing that we've found is really powerful, when we worked with the company Children's Salon, which do children's clothes, they sell internationally, but they found that they had quite a low conversion rate from a number of countries around the world. And part of that is that site was in English, and they have a lot of visitors, for example, markets in the Middle East, markets in Russia, and so on. So what they decided to do is, if they detected that, for example, you were from an overseas market which didn't necessarily speak English, you might have some trouble working out all the returns policies and stuff like that. So they served a little nudge that appeared on the page and said, hey, we know you're in the UAE. We definitely sell to you. If you've got any questions, click this layer, in their local language, and someone will speak to you through live chat in your local language. And that had a 13% increase in conversions for the foreign markets it's deployed on, as compared to just hoping people can work out where your site is if they're used to a very different experience in their home country. One site that has deployed something this quite recently is O2. So if you're in the help and support pages, what O2 will do is after a certain amount of time will trigger a live chat with an O2 advisor. So if you're browsing around, you're not quite sure, if you're anything like me, you really don't want the grief of picking up the phone and trying to work out with these how to actually get through to the right person to speak to. A message actually pops up and says, hey, someone's available right now, do you want to talk? And then that means you can immediately get your query sorted out. And by targeting it on people who you feel are kind of browsing the site rather than everyone, you A, prevent people from getting annoyed with you putting messages in front of the user too often, and B, mean that your advisors are hopefully going to get people who are really interested in actually what they have to say, rather than anyone who's sort of throwing the message. Another really powerful, moving on to number 9 here, is to fill your basket to the brim with free delivery over a certain threshold. So the key idea here is that, for example, if you're offering a free delivery over £75, make sure your visitors know exactly how much or even how little they need to qualify. Now, the two benefits of this are, A, you can boost your average order value, as people, perhaps they're on £65 and they think, hey, I'll get another t-shirt if I want to reach the minimum for free delivery. And alternatively, people can often feel like they're receiving a gift almost with the free delivery, and they're like, okay, hey, I'm actually more likely to convert now because that £5 delivery that was kind of putting me off a bit compared to buying on the high street, actually that's gone now. So people are much happier. And obviously that's a very retail-based example, but we've worked on similar things, for example, energy websites who are selling things like gas and electricity, rather than as an upsell, rather than simply free delivery, saying, hey, we've got a package which is probably better suited to you, considering that you've put in this particular information, so that serve a message has talked to the visitor and say, hey, there's probably a better solution for you. So a common way to do this, for example, is to, if we look down the targeting examples down the bottom of the page here, is to, A, if they're near the threshold, say you're between £60 and £70, 60 and 75, say, hey, look, £75 is the free delivery limit. How about just getting this extra product? And you can even serve products of a similar price just to get you over that limit. Another thing you can do as well is if people have got the £75 limit, not everyone always realizes that. So it can be quite powerful to simply say in someone's basket, hey, do you realize you now qualify for free delivery? And people go, okay, great, and that's just highlighted to me, and now I'll go on to buy. So something that does this relatively effectively is New Look. They have on their basket page here, delivery from £3.95. If you spend £27 more, you can get free standard delivery. And so that kind of encourages people to think, okay, is there something else on the site I really liked? Because I may as well get everything from here, get my free delivery, and have a higher AOV. And also, cleverly, they also put click and collect very visible on the page as well. So they also have a boundary for click and collect, which means that if customers are not sure about buying online, they think, okay, great, I can just go to the store and have a look at it in the store. Another site that uses this quite effectively is going back to Molton Brown, which we looked at earlier. Similar thing in the basket, they'll say, okay, great, you've got £20 in your basket, it's to spend £29 more to get free delivery in the UK. If you were to add something to the basket, it immediately goes, okay, great, just spend £9 more. And it kind of provides that messaging, that little like slight nudges towards actually getting up to that basket value. And our final key point is upselling visitors as they hang around the checkout. So this is something that really across industries, whether you're selling sofas, whether you're selling products such as fast fashion, this idea of being able to provide recommendations, but a bit more targeted than currently. So if you currently, I'm sure a load of you already have a product recommendation engine on your website, but really how much you know about what is offered. How much do you know about what is actually being provided by the recommendation engine? Are there not some offers you prefer to manually target to key users which you know will be powerful rather than relying on the black box or the algorithms? So the idea here really is your visitors, they're on the way to converting, is there anything you can offer them that would be really useful as an extra? So the key thing for us is, from Qubit's perspective, is we want to be kind of agnostic to these recommendation widget vendors and so forth. So what we'd like to do is, when working for clients, is give them the chance to test out if their recommendation widget is actually working. So try it on the basket page, try it on the product page, the category page, stuff like that. A/B test that and actually see, okay, great, is my recommendation widget working, or am I paying a lot of money for something that isn't working, or perhaps actually it would work better on another page? What we'd also like to do as well is you can also do, if you don't currently invest in an automatic algorithm-based product recommendation engine, is providing other recommendations manually. So if you know a particular client is really keen on, a particular group of users are really keen on, for example, your shoes or a particular type of product, how about targeting those with your latest offer immediately, depending on what they've got in their basket and what they've looked like they're already planning to purchase. Now, of course, in terms of product recommendation, everyone will know that Amazon is kind of one of the original forefathers of this approach. You put something in your basket and you see, for example, based on stuff you've bought in the past, what stuff you've got in your basket at the moment, immediate product recommendations along the bottom of the page here. But of course, there's something quite impersonal about this kind of algorithm approach, just kind of throwing products which other customers have bought. It can be effective, of course, definitely worth looking in and testing, but perhaps you have a particular offer that you actually want to speak to the visitor about, serve them perhaps a widget or a particular nice bit of copy which suggests, hey, we've got an offer on this month for this particular product. So here's a great time to perhaps A/B test serving a manual merchandising, so a really nice image of the product and an upsell versus the product recommendation engine. And for some context of how that can work, I worked with a client selling travel tickets, and we found that every year they did a huge marketing campaign with one of their partners, and they got a boost in sales for that month. We found by putting in the basket, highlighting the products in the basket which already had that offer, and also the fact that they now qualified for a free gift, had a huge impact. In fact, at some point, something like almost doubled the conversion rate of the products that were put into the basket, simply by saying, okay, you're in the basket, you're going for the checkout, here's something about your order that's really cool, you're getting this free gift, and here's an upsell which if you get, you'll get another free gift or something like that. So that kind of wraps up the kind of key top 10 kind of quick wins that we like to roll out to clients as soon as we get working with them in terms of that kind of key impact before you start to build a person's experience. And here's kind of like a layout of just a summary of what we've discussed so far. But like I say, there's a lot of quite quick ideas to do here. And when personalization comes really into its own is when you start off with these kind of relatively simple ideas and target to relative segments. For example, we talked about serving the filter by size functionality to new users. We talked about session retargeting to people who perhaps had a look at Disney World in Orlando and making sure they see Disney World Orlando rather than Disneyland Paris when they return to the site. When this becomes really powerful is you can start understanding a picture of your visitors and layering up these little personalizations, these changes to the site, so people have a really, really personalized experience. But rather than having to rewrite your site and do loads of different copy in the page, which of course can be a bit of a development nightmare, deploying these kind of image replacements or product badging, a welcome message, a light box, for example, a live chat functionality, which is a widget that you can just serve. I'm sure many of you have worked with live chat before, or an email capture sign up box. These are all things that kind of go over the page, or they replace part of the page rather than trying to edit the page too much. So you can deploy them very quickly, and secondly, you can be relatively confident they're not going to break your site, which is, when you're trying to do lots of different personalizations, is very important. So for the next stage of this, we're going to have a quick run through Q&A. So if you've got any questions throughout the what we've just talked about, feel free to message through GoToMeeting your questions, and we'll run through any questions that come in just a minute. And while those questions are coming in, I'm going to run through a bit about more our kind of approach to personalization and whether that could be useful to you. So I've thrown out some really interesting ideas here, but how would we actually work with clients to get these implemented? And in fact, how can you now go away back to your team and say, hey, this is the kind of products we should be looking at in the market, this is the kind of ideas, and essentially the kind of process and workflow. So our kind of key aim is to drive conversions fast, deploying things like the widgets we do here. And we really see this as combining tag management, visitor analytics, A/B testing, and personalization. So tag management is very powerful because that can be like your core of your data. And I'm sure, it's looking at the research we've done on the web, most people listening to this will have a tag management system, kind of a central core for your data that you can start to really organize your tags and all of your site's visitor data. Second part is obviously visitor analytics. Helping you understand exactly what's going on the site is the first step to personalization and testing. So you can come up with hypotheses about, okay, I see that people who visit the store finder on my website have a low conversion rate, but that makes sense. So perhaps we should personalize the site knowing they're going to go offline and then really push click and collect, for example. For us, any change like that should be A/B tested because there are no really 100% guarantees when it comes to personalizing your site. It's really about, there's some really good ideas, but every site has different traffic sources, every site has different types of visitors, every property you work with will have different types of people coming onto the site with very different kind of demands and behaviors that you're trying to nudge towards conversion. So everything should be A/B tested. And then that kind of moves on to personalization. So even if you're doing personalizations, we will run them through A/B testing process first, just to make sure you're having a positive effect. And really this should be done as an iterative cycle. So have a hypothesis. So you have a kind of idea that a certain segment of people are interested in a certain part of your product range. You test it out from using the analytics, see if that makes sense. You sound out the idea. You test it out using A/B testing. And then if it wins, you move into personalization. But then that's not where it stops. You monitor the personalization's impact on the site. So the way that we kind of do it, this is a quick introduction to the way the platform that we use here at Qubit. You see the left hand on the side of the screen and the right hand side, two types of data that we use. So there's quantitative data, so this is actual visitor level, very, very granular, based on the data layer you put into your page. What have you done? What are your visitors doing on an aggregate level? And the other side of it is feedback. So we provide a service where, and I'm sure you've seen similar things in the market, where people can enter unstructured, completely random data. And the difference with us, of course, is that we categorize it automatically using machine learning and provide you with the categories of people. So this kind of gives you your ideas. So what do I need to change in my site? What do I need to A/B test? And how do I need to personalize? The second side of that, of course, is actually doing that. So we provide an interface called Deliver, which we're working hard to constantly make as easy as possible to change the way your site looks very easily. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see targeting options. So for this quick example we've got on the screen here, we're saying people in the UK whose traffic source is organic search, who's on category pages, we're going to throw them this message. And on the right-hand side of the screen, we've got an example of our what you see is what you get editor, where we can make changes, just like the ones I've discussed throughout this webinar today. Make changes to the site, click publish, it's live on the site. We have real-time stats which show, okay, we know every 5 minutes the impact of just the conversions of all of your site, and then comparing the variant and the control of the A/B tests. So that means that if you did have an issue with your site, because you could deploy some maybe advanced JavaScript, if it is causing a problem for your site, you'll immediately see that conversions have dropped and you'll pause it. Very unlikely occurrence, but it gives you that kind of extra peace of mind. Second thing, of course, is seeing the stats. So making sure that we have test results which automatically tell you when statistical significance has been reached. That means that you know that whatever personalization or change you made to the site, you know that's definitely having an effect. It's worth rolling out. And what we like to do is, even if you want to serve it to all users, which I would say in quotes, we actually serve it to 95% of the visitors and leave 5% to a control group. And that means that even a year down the line, you can make sure that your A/B tests that worked a year ago, is your personalization still working now? Or perhaps Andy Murray mania from Wimbledon has died down, and perhaps you want to kind of shift your marketing campaign slightly. So remember tests. don't always win forever. It's really good to keep monitoring them on forever, essentially. So jumping back to the Q&A, we're just going to run through any of the questions that have come in. If you bear with us one moment. Okay, cool. We've got quite a few questions coming in, so I should be able to run through them. Just give me 1 second. So we had a question, sorry, I can't actually see the slides were sent on, but whether there's some other question about whether a particular pop-up can be deployed via the Qubit platform. Yeah, so very good question. So at the moment, we have the ability to essentially deploy what you see is what you get experience. So what you see is what you get is essentially where, without any technical experience at all, you can deploy various layers, we call them layers, but pop-ups, similar kind of terminology, on the site and push it live. And that's all through the platform. Now you can also do, say you want to make a very advanced change to the page, anything you want through JavaScript. So with the developer mode essentially, where same A/B testing methodology, same personalization methodology, but a developer in-house or your agency can deploy anything they wish in terms of JavaScript. And certainly where, although I don't know which one exactly you're referring to, that's certainly the way we're going down to make it very easy for people to deploy everything we've talked about, but through the platform. And if you've got further questions on that and you want to let me know exactly what pop-up you were talking about, feel free to send us an email or reply to the invite to this webinar and we'll get back to you on that. We have another question saying someone's turned up late to the webinar because they're due to a late meeting. Yeah, absolutely. We'll make sure to send out the slides and we'll also put it on YouTube so you'll be able to follow up. And any other questions you have, just email in. So, and we have another question here just quickly. Are there any examples on additional resources that extra functionality will require team-wise? So, yeah, I mean, obviously that's quite a general question, but what we're trying to do in terms of, say, providing the things we've gone through in the last half an hour, we've really tried to go for an approach where we can actually do this without requiring developer resource. So many of the tests that we deploy, for example, nudging people towards free delivery, stuff like that, is actually done by our client manager team at the moment, or by our clients. For example, the marketing team. We're really, really focusing the platform around making it easy. If you're a developer, making it life easy for you, either doing advanced JavaScript or what you see is what you get, because I mean, that just makes life easier. It just makes life so much quicker as a developer. Because if you can imagine, everything you deploy to a site needs to be cross-browser tested. You need to make sure it doesn't have a bad impact. You need to monitor the impact. We really want to make it easy. So really, we want it to be able to be the case that, say you have an analyst on the team which already knows Google Analytics, already perhaps has worked with the Qubit platform before. We want that same person to perhaps work with a designer to be able to deploy personalizations very easily. And if you were to work with us directly, for example, you'd be able to deploy our design resource or in-house. Obviously, it really depends on the use case. But in general, we find that a lot of what we do doesn't require major kind of team and extra functionality, additional resource. And at the end of the day, if you can A/B test it, once you start going down this road of personalizations, then you see a great ROI, then you think, okay, great, we should actually invest in the resource anyway. So yeah. Okay, so just to kind of wrap that up, once again, if you've got any further questions, I'm really happy to email back or reply to the invites, and I'll take you through that, because I know we had a lot to get through, especially if you have a look on the YouTube, or this will all be available on our website in the next couple of days. Two other things you might be interested in to follow on from this is these white paper and infographic we've produced in the last month, putting personalization into practice. And this is a really nice way of kind of thinking about, okay, I've spent the last so many years in the online industry. I know about GA, I know about visitor analytics, I'm really good at that, but how am I going to put that behavior into practice? Take a look at that white paper. That gets you start thinking about both what you can do in terms of what we've talked about, and also how you can implement that in your own team, in your own organization. So yeah, so thanks everybody for joining. My email address is on the slide here, henry@qubitproducts.com, or if you've got any other questions, either tweet us at Qubit Group, or reply to a meeting invite from us at Qubit. Hope you enjoyed that. I hope you really were able to take on some of these ideas, apply it to your own company, and got what you're thinking about what you can do with personalization, how you can really implement a process. And look out for our next webinar.